This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with Eau Claire County. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
Good evening. It being 7 o'clock, I would like to call to order on this Tuesday, June 18th, the Eau Claire County Board of Supervisors. And we'll open our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of reflection by Supervisor Melissa Jansen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we have a very busy agenda tonight and a lot of people here willing to speak, which is wonderful. So I promise I will keep my reflection brief. June has always been my favorite month. It's the month with the most hours of sunlight when we watch the flowers of spring transition into the fruits of summer. It is the month we all held on to in our hearts as we battled the worst winter in history, and June is finally here. It's always a month of festivity with graduations, concerts, weddings, and many new beginnings. But this year I have been able to be a part of some truly special celebrations. On June 4th, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Senate passing the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. We were also proud to point out that Wisconsin was the first state to ratify this amendment a few days later. That same week, thanks to the power of social media, I was able to follow along as my dear friend, Eau Claire police officer and United States Air Force Reserve Major Phil Noland traveled to France and partnered with air crews from across the U.S. Air Force and several other allied nations to conduct flyovers and airdrops in commemoration of the 75th anniversary of D-Day. I have enjoyed participating in several Pride activities this month and still have a few more to look forward to. And I really hope you will all join me tomorrow at the Pine Pavilion in Carson Park at 5:30 for the Eau Claire Juneteenth celebration. All of these events represent major victories, but at the beginning, each of these victories seemed like an impossible hurdle to overcome. And they would have been if it hadn't been for the willingness of diverse groups of people to come together, make tremendous sacrifices, and fight for those most in need of a voice. We still have a lot of work to do. There are many more battles that need to be won. Glass ceilings still exist. War and genocide continue across the world, and we are a long way from ensuring a safe, welcoming, and equitable environment for people of color and our LGBTQ+ communities. But when these future victories seem impossible, I ask you all to do what we in Wisconsin have always done. Remember the sunshine of June on the darkest and coldest days of winter. There is always hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, would supervisors please take their keypads and register their presence?
Yeah.
Technology is wonderful, especially when it works. Be good? And we have,
Supervisor Anton.
thank you. And we have 22 present. We have 25 present. We have a quorum. Thank you.
Oh, Brandon. I'll change.
The next item on our agenda is the approval of the Journal of Proceedings from the May 21st meeting. I see a motion by Supervisor Leary and a second by Supervisor Neiman. Are there any corrections or additions or comments in regard to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Hi.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries and the minutes are approved. It's at this point in our meeting, each meeting, that we have the opportunity for those that wish to share concerns and opinions with us to be able to address the board I would encourage you, since there seems to be quite a few present, to stay within the confines of the 3-minute rule. And we will begin with John Bodkin. Next up would be Andrew Worthman.
Thank you for a moment. My name is John Bodkin, and full disclosure, I'm here as a representative of the Forest Street Community Garden, which has been working for 10 years in the Forest Street Greenway. And it's a beautiful place, and it's welcoming to a lot of different groups. It's in addition to our garden group, which is kind of like a co-op. We have lots of neighborhood people come visit the park. Residents live right adjacent there. They bring their dogs and their kids down there. Bikers come through the park. People out for an evening stroll come through the park. And even people who lived there some years ago before their houses were taken away for flood concerns like to come back and visit and see some of the trees that may have been in their yard or reminisce about days of their youth. And now we have a new visitor to the park, and that's the Veterans Tribute Group. And they have been welcomed by all of those groups I just mentioned, but now they are proposing to name the park Veterans Tribute Park, which is representative of only one of the groups that I mentioned. There's been a lot of support for the Veterans Group. The county has given their support, and to the tune of about $350,000, which is a lot of support. The city's given their support in land use and a maintenance agreement. The Garden Group has given their support. We're excited to get a parking lot and restrooms. The neighborhood has given their support. And all of that support will neither be diminished nor enhanced by the naming of the park. Veterans will be having tribute affairs and ceremonies. They will neither be diminished nor enhanced by the naming of the park. The veterans say they will support the others that use the park, but there will be conflicts, and I'd hate for the conflicts to be settled by, well, this is Veterans Park and we're the veterans. For example, the first act they want to do is cut down a couple of trees right in the vicinity of the garden, which you might as well be killing puppies at the SPCA meeting. The Veterans Park is going to be a great tribute to veterans, but the naming of it should be something that is inclusive of all the groups and not exclusive of the other groups that visit the park. Thank you for your time.
Andrew Worthman, please. And the next individual up will be Steve Wagner.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Bates, and to all supervisors. Good evening. My name is Andrew Worthman. I reside at 1012 Chauncey Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. Just a little bit of background. I'm here to speak about the renaming of the Forest Street Park. That's a space that has had a, I would say, somewhat difficult and troubled history as a floodway where neighbors had been flooded repeatedly over the years in our city's history. Finally, in the mid-1990s, homes were removed, were bought out. Families had to be relocated. And I'm proud to say that the Forest Street Community Garden, of which I'm a part, and the Neighborhood Association took active role to figure out how to make that a beacon, a center of a new community that wants to thrive and that wants to succeed. The Forest Street Community Garden was started there with the mission of encouraging and training folks how to grow their own food, which is something that I think we're realizing more and more the importance of. Our connection to the land, how we treat the land, how we grow our own food, and how we treat each other. After 10 years, we've had over 2,000 visitors come down to that space, including many nonprofits, many churches, United Way, and have worked with countless numbers of schools and kids groups to kind of encourage them to see the value in growing their own food. That's a space also that we've raised over $100,000 and invested in, not to diminish any of the work that we do at the community table in terms of providing thousands of pounds of fresh fruits and vegetables for them. I'm very proud of the work that has happened over 10 years. And I think that the opportunity of having the veterans join that space is going to be positive. And I think there's a natural ally there. And I would say in terms of a community and a neighborhood that has always sought to lift itself up, that's going to be a positive development. The renaming, I don't think is inclusive. I don't think that it respects the amount of hard work and time that thousands of community members have put into that space. And I would encourage you to consider either voting no on this or postponing indefinitely on the renaming. But I think, in my estimation, probably the first thing that would be thought of is whether the park even needs to have a name change. And second of all, if it does, my recommendation would be that it be a much more inclusive name of all the different users of that space. So with the highest of respect for the veterans and the organization that's seeking to change the name of this park, I would respectfully ask the board to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Steve Wagner. And next would be Bob Andrewski. Am I getting
Sort
it?
of like that.
Thank you.
Andrew Skevich.
Andrew Skevich. Thank you.
Good evening. It's really great to see some people that I'm familiar with and friends on the board and out in the audience. My name is Steve Wagner. I live on 1501 Canfield Street here in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I'm a lifelong resident of Eau Claire County, graduating from Regis High School in Eau Claire County, and received my associate degree in civil structural technology at CVTC, which was called District 1 Technical Institute when I was there. My spouse, Michelle, and I are currently retired citizens, faithfully paying our property taxes on our home down on Little Niagara Creek, down in the 3rd Ward. It's beautiful down there. I invite you to come visit. I have the proud honor of being the first person to retire from Jam Software just across the river over there in 2015. I also spent the last parts of my employee career at Charter Communications in Eau Claire as an advanced video engineer and an assistant producer of the 5, 6, and 10 o'clock news at WQOW Channel 18 here in Eau Claire. Michelle and I raised our 3 sons, Ben, Nate, who's celebrating his 38th birthday today. Happy birthday, Nate. And my oldest son, Nick. All my sons attend Eau Claire Public Elementary, Middle, and High Schools. My son, Nick, was a citizen of the city of Eau Claire and Eau Claire County all of his short life. Nick was an Iraqi war veteran. Last September, Nick tragically died here in the city in one of our parks on the shores of Dells Pond. He was one of the many of the few. I've been a citizen activist and volunteer since I was a teen at Regis in the late 60s. I've spent many hours volunteering for great causes in our county. I've participated in other volunteering with others in volunteering at our community table. I've served as an unpaid volunteer videographer for community television, back in that room, and our television station called Valley Media Works now. I've also been on the other side of these cameras. I'm in front of right here tonight. I also served several terms on the once named Chippewa Valley Community TV and on their board of directors. I volunteered with Eli Godfrey. I hope some of you remember his name. I know you were around. Eli headed up the Eau Claire County Huber Inmate Gardening Program at the community gardens out on Jeffers Road. I worked with him several years. And if we could find a volunteer like that to fill his boots, I'd be right alongside of him. We also worked on a children's garden down by Banbury Place for kids that were attending daycare down there. We built a lasagna garden down there, he and I together. Currently, I'm serving on the board of directors for our community radio station, Wise Radio, 96.3 on your terrestrial radio dial. That's my plug, boys. and we're streaming 24/7 at wiseradio.org. I love my community. Have you seen a pattern in what I just mentioned? And I want the people and the organizations that have similar feelings and objectives for our community, I want to work with them. And that's why I'm here tonight. I've come to speak tonight about a place in our county that you've recently looked at to invest in with our citizens' tax dollars. I've spent some blood, sweat, and treasure there I've worked with Carrie Olson Kinnerman and Andrew Worthman, the previous speaker. I can't think of a better guy to follow up. At the city county, at Eau Claire's Forest City Community Gardens. And that's the subject I would like to talk to you about tonight. Some of my friends are here tonight, and they've already spoken on this topic, and I concur with them 100%. The topic of naming this place, I agree, needs to be inclusive. And I'm on both sides of this issue, and I want to see both sides addressed. I'd like you to consider what I'm saying tonight and take it to heart. It is likely I'll come back to talk to you again about this Riverside part of our county. Next time, I promise to skip my litany of resume, unless, of course, I see a lot of new faces out here. Please remember, in all your decisions and your influence, by spending our taxpayer dollars in this park to honor those that continue to contribute to our city through their volunteerism, and thank you for giving us a voice. I leave you with just one more request. In all your decisions regarding this place of our community, honor the warrior, not the wars. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bob?
Good evening. My name is Robert. Last name is Andrew Skevich. It sounds simple, but it looks difficult. I came here this evening to speak to the county board and to the veterans here to let you know that we respect you when we say that we disagree with the renaming of the park. And I say that deeply with the knowledge that my family, friends, and neighbors have given to our country. And I don't see a name as being as the testament and the honor that our veterans deserve that have lost their lives. So with that, I'm going to leave it at that, and I hope you decide to choose for the people in general, inclusive of the park's name, to say that we need to honor all of the Eau Claire community and that we don't want to be promoting war and warriors or war. We want to promote the warriors. I want to also say that I agree with all the previous speakers. They did a great job, better than I did. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Kay Olson? Please.
Good evening. I'm Kay Olson. I'm a veteran, 26 years active duty in the Army. My son was a Marine. Andy was killed in Iraq. When your son or daughter is killed in the military, you become a Gold Star mom. That's why you see this tonight. I belong to the Legion. I belong to the Patriotic Council. I belong to the Veterans Tribute. I'm a member of all of them. So needless to say, I am very much in support of the Veterans Tribute Park. It's something that our people that we need have. You've been out. There isn't a veterans park here in our area that we can go to and see and look at and be with. If you go to Bloomer, if you go to Clintonville, if you go to Osseo, if you go to all these smaller towns, even Spring Valley has a very nice veterans park. When you come to Eau Claire, it's not there. It's not representing our veterans in our area. The interesting part is it's very educational, the park that we're going to put in. It's going to start with the Civil War, and it's going to go up to the present, and it will continue to represent all of the veterans in the Eau Claire area. Also, it's going to draw people from outside of town in the areas into the downtown area, which I think would be something that we would all want. Also to come to our park, but also be all the way around to visit the Veterans Tribute, visit all of them all the way around. Not only that, we all got here because our soldiers, our families, everybody fought for us to be able to discuss and make decisions that we have to make right now, and that you as the board members have a challenge with all of us that's here tonight. I can't think of anything else to say other than I do hope it goes Veteran Tribute Park. That's what I would like to hear, and that's what I'm working for. And you might see me up here again if we have a more discussion on it. And thank you.
Thank you for coming. Marv Zerber? Is it Marv or Mark?
Mark.
Thank you.
I'm going to apologize. I am not speaking on the Veterans Tribute Park. I thought I'd get that over with really quick. My name is Mark Zuber, and I represented the town of Drummond on the Ag Ordinance Review Committee. I'd like to personally thank the members of the committee that put their time in. There are 3 other people here tonight that were on that committee, for their efforts in forming the new Ag Ordinance for Eau Claire County. I would also thank Gary Gibson for chairing the very diverse committee. He also told me I was supposed to tell all of you that he worked really hard. I would also state how lucky Eau Claire County is to have 2 dedicated people like Greg Leonard and Amanda Peters to lead that group. Sometimes we fail to recognize the people who really do most of the work. They educated the committee to come up with the end product, which you will hopefully be approving tonight. The committee met, discussed, and voted on what you have before you, as this plan of action has strengthened the enforcement for air and water quality through NR 151 standards and 590 nutrient management plans for Eau Claire County. It may, however, as technology and times change, a review may be necessary. I would hope that that would be considered. Finally, thank you, the members of the county board, for allowing the people most affected by this ordinance to help draft the ordinance. Have a good evening.
Thank you for coming. Tammy Smith Sherseth.
I'm Tammy Smith Schroeder. I am part owner of Bears Grass Dairy, which is a 400-cow dairy farm between Augusta and Fall Creek, and I'm here tonight to talk about the Ag Ordinance. I want to reiterate the things that Mark Zuper said. We were a very diverse committee. I was part of that committee representing a producer farmer on that committee. There was a lot of lively discussions on things. We worked very hard. We got an awful lot accomplished. And I think that the end product that we ended up with is a good product, and I encourage the county board to support it. And I agree with Mark that it's something that we're going to have to keep working on and keep looking at. And we all have the same goal of having clean water and clean air. We just are realizing that we can't get to it as easily as we thought. So I think I think the ordinance is good, and I really encourage you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Derek Nelson.
Hi, I'm Derek Nelson. I was also on the special committee for the Ag Ordinance Review. I was probably the youngest member on the committee. Our family just invested and built a brand new 200-cow dairy facility just south of town. I agree that it was time that we reviewed all of these standards and did an overhaul of them. And I'm not discounting that they may not need to be looked at in the future when new technology and things come about. I would hope that the county board would pass what we have presented to you and voted on and worked very hard on over the winter. And just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Is there anyone else that has not been noted that wishes to address the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to, excuse me. Please, would you step forward? And please give your name.
Thank you. My name is Jill Kelly. I'm a member of the Forest Street Community Garden. I'm super nervous, so first time I've spoken here. I'm really in support of a lot of the speakers who ask you to question the name of the garden, and I do too. I wish to voice my concern that the name of the park will recognize both that the new trail and memorial for the Veterans of War is important, as well as the existing community garden. I'd also like to point out that the trail has already been named. The trail, I believe it's called the Patriot Trail, and it is in, it's talking about this Veterans Park, really. The Forest Street Community Garden space has been serving Eau Claire for over 10 years. All Eau Claire citizens are welcome to participate in community gardening and celebrate in a peaceful space that nurtures and provides food for its gardeners, as well as many in the community in need. We do support the community table, as well as other organizations. I want veterans to be a celebrated part of our community, and it is my hope that they are nurtured and welcomed too. The new memorial for veterans has my support, but I also want to recognize both entities that will coexist within the same space. And I think that idea of coexistence is the most important thing for me when thinking about this whole project. It's not like we're saying we want the Veterans Park or we don't. I think everyone's in support of it. I think really we're just talking about how do we coexist? How do we include everyone's presence in the space? Also, I want to say that the act of memorializing veterans is much appreciated, as I have multiple family members who have served our country in wartime, including my father, who is a veteran of the Korean War. I'm in favor of the name of the Forest Street. I'm in favor of a name for the Forest Street Greenway that recognizes both the new memorial for veterans as well as the established community garden. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Anyone else? Did we miss anyone else? Alrighty. Then I think we can move on to the next item on our agenda, and that's report to the county boards. And the first one we have is from our county administrator,
Thank
Catherine
you.
Schraub.
The first thing that I wanted to let the board know is that we received notice today that Larry Locken has been rejected in his arguments, and that the Court of Appeals upheld the original sentence as imposed by Judge Tyson. And so I thought the board would have an interest in that. We have been putting out information in the timeline for the screening on the second floor. Tomorrow at noon, there will be an open session where the media and the public are welcome to attend, as well as board members as they begin looking at and sharing the access and the way that the access will work on the second floor. They started out with a soft launch at the beginning of this week to work out any of the bugs. The date in which it will be fully operational is July 1st. Also, you had been shared an email regarding one piece of legislation, AB 283, that was being proposed at the state that would actually require a referendum be passed for vehicle registration fees, not only those being proposed, but it would be retroactive for those who already have vehicle registration fees. At this point, that legislation has actually been pulled by the Assembly Transportation Committee due to a lack of consensus. The Senate is still holding a public hearing on that, and we'll keep you posted on how that transpires and how that moves through the state, as it will have a direct effect on Eau Claire County from a fiscal standpoint. The final item that I wanted to let the board know about is that our Department of Human Services, as well as our Finance Department, have been working on an engagement with Clifton Larson Allen. They are the individuals who also provide our audit. This suggestion came through conversations with Supervisor Beckfield, and the team has been working on identifying a collaborative effort to improve the overall reporting, communication, and metric identification for the Department of Human Services. And they have worked through what the scope will be, and we anticipate hearing something back from Clifton Larson Allen this week, and I believe that will go directly to Norb Kirk, who has been the lead on this project. If there is an interest, there is more detail that can be provided to the board. And that is all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Next, I'm going to call on Diane Cable, Director of Human Services, to also give a report, update.
This is the fun part. Okay. Yes. Good evening. So I'm here to tonight to just briefly give you a update on our current status at the Department of Human Services. Speak just a bit to the data and what it tells us, and then tell you a little bit about how we are responding. You may recall that a year ago, through our budget process, we recognized and said at these different points that there is an urgent crisis, not only here in Eau Claire County, but throughout the state. This past legislative session, the Wisconsin Counties Association took this up as an issue with regard to the concern to the lack and inadequate funding in the child welfare area. And most recently, the Joint Finance Committee, through the budget process, has approved a $25.5 million to the GPR for the Children and Families allocation, which then will go into effect with the passage of the budget. And at this time, as we understand from the Wisconsin Counties Association, that the governor is in support of that funding increase, which is needed. Our current budget for human services is $32,432,373. Unfortunately, you can't see these bars as well as I'd like you to see, but you can kind of see the gray effect on top. And you can see the blue. Oh, thank you. Thank you. The revenues, so the whole bar reflects the budget. The blue area reflects the levy, and the green then, or the blue the levy, and the green the additional revenue that makes up the entire budget. And this is over the period of 2014 to 2019. And I started with this just to show kind of how, in a snapshot of how our budget has evolved over time. The increase of revenue areas, those bars in 2017, 18, and 19, shows really reflective of the development of the behavioral health programming, the integration of children's court services to the department. And for 2019, the blue area represents a tax levy of $8,680,435, which is about 27% of our budget. So there's a lot going on, I realize, on this slide, but I think I can walk through it okay with you. This slide is representative, again, through the years 2014 to 2018. Budget to actual, it tells us, and also levy. The blue column is the budgeted areas. And so you can see across the years through 2014 to 18 of this is how the department was approved for a budget. The orangish reddish column is the actual. And so that represents where for each year the department ended actually for their expenses. The gray area is what was the budgeted levy, and again represents similarly to the prior slide, kind of the consistent levy that has helped to support the operations in the department. And then the yellow bar shows the additional levy that was supported and needed to help support the operations over time of the budget. And because of the line kind of going through there shows the percentage of tax levy to budget. And so you see that as the revenues have been growing within the budget, that percentage then changes, even though that levy has remained fairly stable, then that percentage has been decreasing in compared to the rest of the revenues coming to support the operations. So, I want to talk a little bit about what's causing the overage. What we know for this year is that our current, at the end of April, where we currently are landing is about, it would show $2 million over budget. When we remove the CCS program, which we know is fully reimbursable, and we take that out, our year-to-date overage at the end of April is $1.445 million. So why? Why is this happening? And as I've said in prior presentations, these are the items that we continue to talk about, and so wanted to put some figures to this. And one of the things that we are noting, besides in the area of child welfare and youth justice and alternate care, is that we're having an increase in the adult services area. We're seeing an overage in placements with adult family homes, in adult CBRFs, in hospitalizations for adults, also an overage for kids with hospitalizations, and with alternate care with kids. We also know that more than 85% of our referrals in child welfare have a linkage to substance abuse and most often some involvement of meth. And an increasing number, if not all of our families, are involved with mental health issues. And we are seeing thus also a correlation to that with our adults and an increasing number of adults involved with meth and substance abuse who we are serving and needing a level of care that is of higher intensity. So just a couple graphs to show that we're seeing an increase in adult protective services referrals. So you see the spike of the yellow line, which represents 2018. So this is between 2015 and 2019, this graph, and these referrals, and you see this spike. And so one of the things that we know is that within the last couple of years, the mandates for reporting for adult protective services, some of those regulations have changed, in which now there's increased requirements for the financial institutions and bankers to report differently. And it has caused a spike in our adult protective services referrals and specifically related to financial fraud. You also see here, this is referrals with regard to child protective services and youth referrals, a continued growth in those referrals that come into the agency. In this slide, we see the continued, this is related to adult placements, and we are, as I said earlier, serving an increasing number of adults in placements, group homes and adult family homes. This does not include places like Trempealeau County or Winnebago. This is adult family homes and group homes. We also see, as you know, and have heard before, the increasing expense to alternate care as it relates to not just placements, but length of time because of the complexities sometimes of the issues that are presented that we have seen over the course of the years in child welfare and youth services. So, what are we doing about it? We are responding in a variety of different ways, on multi-levels and in multifaceted ways, and we've been responding for a long time. 2016, you recall, we became certified in CCS, recognizing that the community needs to be able to have more behavioral health services. In 2017, we expanded then our behavioral health services even more with our CCS program, our Comprehensive Community Services program, and we began to do trauma-informed work with how we approach and do our work. In 2018, we continued that expansion. We became certified with our outpatient clinic, enhanced our crisis response services, and began to shift our mindset about how we can approach, to do things a new way. We recognized we can't continue on this path. It isn't okay for those we're serving, and we can't continue to afford that way of serving. So in 2018, we ended with a deficit of $2.3 million about. We're now in 2019, and we continue our work. And we continue to move forward with, we started intensive permanency services, specifically working on bringing back and reunifying our kids in our highest placements intensely and intentionally. And we have a plan in place for those kids to be able to return home or return to a permanent situation. We've become certified with our substance abuse clinic, and we've started to involve and intentionally become more involved and approach our services in an earlier intervention way. What we know is we still project to be over budget. Now, it's not easy to stand up here and tell you that. And we're hoping that that does not come true, but we are projecting to still come in over budget for this year of about $2 million. Now, we're working really hard for that to not happen. So what we're seeing is, with that hard work and with these changes of approaches of how we are doing this, that in the first slide on the left, you will see some bars that show our highest level of care, RCC's residential child care centers, in placements, and if there were if there were no changes April through December, that this is how these placements would end up, with a significant cost again of $2 million, $2.5 million in RCCs. What we know is that we've had since March, actually since this data, since March, but it happened in May or April, in May, we've had 5 kids reunify because of some different work that we're doing. That's significant. And as a result, we're now seeing that bar on that gold bar on the right side go down. We also, there's projection for some other kids, it's continuous for that reunification and those permanency plans to be happening. So wanted to share that some of that intentional work of doing it a new way, how it is beginning to show some trends and impact. We also see with our adult family homes some changes, projected changes. in which we are instituting some additional times when we are reviewing the functional screens to see the eligibility for other programs, including family care. And we're projecting at least 3 different individuals who would be able to be served in another way. We want to assure that people are getting the best services that they need to be cared for, but if there is another way that can better do that for them, and I'm recognizing that with, this is just recognizing one individual, one case change that it would have moving over to being served in the family care, managed care organization. So we also then project for in 2020 as we continue to do this work and what kind of impact that would have. We are working with our internal therapists to begin to going out directly into homes to do intensive in-home therapy, to increase how we can connect with families, and to again increase our earlier intervention and then move to prevention services. We are seeing then a reduction in out-of-home care, out-of-home placements and alternate care placements for kids and adults, reduction in hospitalizations, and we project then for 2020 a fiscal impact of an overage of $950,000. Again, hope that it's not that high, but it is what we are projecting from where we are today. We are working with children and youth who, these aren't new placements. Some of these placements are from 4 or 5 years ago. And so it takes time for those changes to occur. And we project then that trend will continue, in which then we will be able to be within our budget, as we currently have in budget with our current tax levy by 2021. So with that, because I know you have a busy night tonight, I'm going to stop and see if you have any questions.
Any questions from the board? I'm Supervisor Chilson and then Supervisor Wilkie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay. The question tonight is going to center around the presentation that you just gave and then the presentation that we saw on May 20th. The numbers and the information on the slide that you presented tonight were not the same as what you presented on the 20th.
Mm-hmm.
The slide tonight, it showed, well, I'll back up. On the slide from the May 20th joint meeting, Finance and Budget, COA, and Human Services, through the end of March of this year, it showed that you had a $1 million, it was projected, or it was an actual number, it was approximately $1 million overage, shortage. On tonight's presentation, it shows through the end of April, you have a $1,445,000 overage. It then went on to state that you project for your yearly overage to be $2 million. If I quantify that using the April data, which is 1/3 of the way home, that puts us at a number of $4,335,000. So when I dispute that number, or I have severe questions about it. The other thing is one of the slides that was up there, it showed on the 2020 is that you project a $950,000 shortfall, is what it said, with 2021 being even. In the presentation we had on May 20th with the consultant that was brought in, her words were exactly, we can expect 2 more very painful years followed by 1 more year that's painful but not as painful. So I guess my question is, what happened in a month that things improved so drastically from what we were told by the consultant to what's being presented tonight on the slides?
So there's a lot of questions in there, I think, is what you asked. And over the period of time between March and April, our budget is always evolving, and that would be my answer, is it's always evolving to be able to improve and do better. Our budget, the consultant, Dr. Frank Meyer, who was there with us that evening, gave what she knew as a consultant, what she felt that from her perspective. And so I'm presenting to you what I believe that we're going to, what I project that we'll be able to do. I can't promise it, though, to you. But what we project and what we see will be able to happen with our increasing revenues that are coming in and connection of behavioral health programs, earlier connection of therapies that we are seeing occur today. We are working to and planning to bring. Staff have plans for dates for when kids and adults will be in lesser restrictive or reunified in placements. And so based upon all of those different dynamics is how I'm bringing that to you.
I have nothing further at this point.
Thank you. Supervisor Wilkie, please.
Diane, maybe you can help me with this, because I'm not sure what to say any longer to department heads. Over the years, always my understanding has been that when you misproject an expense, and that's obviously what's going on here, or at least in my opinion, as we've discussed before, I think some of the projections were overly optimistic when we're budgeted. But with the way we've handled cost overruns, we try to catch them early in the year in small departments or big departments. In the small departments or the big departments, when they're going over expenses, we tell them to manage it, which means you need to find ways to not just add new programs to cut your costs, which is fine, which makes sense, I get that, but there is at some point, there's a need to cut expenses, mitigate. I didn't see any mitigating up there. I seen some good things up there. You're trying to cut down those areas that you're blowing over the budget. But I don't know what to tell department heads anymore. I recalled at a budget and finance meeting, and I understand why the sheriff's department came to a judicial law meeting and requested a deputy, a detective, and 4 correctional officers this year for the 4th quarter and then going in next year. Well, there's no way on God's green earth we can do that, but they are operating up in the jail not at best practice standards, at minimal standards, and we're expecting them to stay within their budget, period. What do I tell other department heads what appears to be preferential treatment for human services who essentially appears as if they're using our fund balance as their contingency fund? Now, what do I tell other department heads why human services has preferential treatment?
You want to add to this, please?
Well, I'm wondering if you would want me to answer that from just the perspective of the messaging that we provide to department heads. I think that when we as an organization are working with our departments, our ask of them is exactly as you stated, that we would ask that to the extent that is possible, that we would actually do as much as we can to mitigate any budget overrun expenditure. And that would include identifying areas where can we make reductions on the expenditure side to make that happen. When we look at some of the data that is coming out of human services at this current time, we have a revenue shortage that is essentially driving in much of the discussion where we are at today. And that revenue shortage is a combination of state funding and local level funding that has not kept pace with the increases of 53% and more in areas where we actually see the client intake increasing. And so we have a combination of those two items. When we have taken some time to actually meet with Human Services and go over this in detail, one of the other issues is that they are working with a population of individuals that, for instance, in highway, if we were to run short, we can adjust the construction schedule, we can move projects around, we can do some of those types of activities. The reality in Human Services is that the number of individuals who are in our care at this time need to be serviced appropriately while they are in care, and the consequence of not handling it, not continuing the work that's happening now is, and the concern would be, that the costs would actually continue to go up instead of going down in the long run. And I believe that when you look at this and what WCA, and this is why the Wisconsin Counties Association has called what is currently happening in the state a child welfare crisis. Out of the 72 counties, they have identified a funding gap of $80 to $90 million. So the $25.5 million that the state is increasing that budget by will begin to help. But one of the other things that we're hearing from the state and from the deputy designee is that they understand and know that they cannot continue to serve that population in the same manner, and it must change. And so one of the positive things that is coming out of the work that's currently being done with our Department of Human Services is that the state is saying, we are going to be following your lead in changing the way that we provide this care. And so I think that everyone in the state can acknowledge that what is currently happening is not working. And we can all agree that reform is needed. And we can all agree that it is not sustainable in its current state. I don't believe we have anyone that disagrees with that.
No, I wouldn't disagree with that. I wouldn't disagree with that at all. There's no question. I think this full board is fully aware that the state hasn't kept pace with the funding. And I don't see that changing significantly anytime soon. And I understand the concept full well, as I do believe all board members do, that there are some expenses you can't control. The court order is a placement, it's a placement. We understand that, but I do believe there are areas within your budget, other areas that have to then be looked at and decreased. And I'd ask you to do that. And I would also ask that one thing you do control is your budget when it's proposed. And I would ask that this year that we be more, what I'll call realistic on what we budget in those line items that you outlined that blow over our budget. We just can't keep going the way we're going.
I would agree with you with regard to that. I would agree.
Thank you for those comments. Supervisor Anton, please.
Yes, thank you. I have a concern about the budget. You and I talked several months ago, and I said, why is it that we're unable to predict budget-wise where we're going to be? Because every year we have a pretty good sense of where we've been. We have an idea of the trends, and working those trends out through the year, we then have a pretty good idea of what the cost would be. And I'm a bit puzzled with the concept of not having a realistic budget. I recognize maybe the budget's going through the roof because of various things that are happening. But why is it that we can't have a budget that's likely to be accurate or pretty close to it. I don't see changes in the activity of our population being so immediate and so much different than they have been in the past. I think there's a steady trend of maybe not very good things happening, but I think we should be able to predict that. I would like to see a budget that's accurately stated as best we can, and it doesn't appear that we have that. And the second question is, what are the other counties doing? Do they have the same problem that we do? Do we serve at a different level than they do, provide more services? On a comparison basis, if you can just make some comment how we rack up our services against them. Thank you.
So in comparison to other counties are experiencing these same issues of budget overages. And I'm not prepared to speak to how that lays out with all different counties. How counties respond to that is in a variety of different ways. When you can do engagement and trauma-informed and family connection services that are occurring in other counties, the impact of that in helping to respond through behavioral health means that help us to receive revenues to help support those services. It leads to better outcomes for those individuals, and it helps to have those funds to help support providing those services. With regard to the budget, we have discussed in the past what we need based on the trends for the budget. We've talked about that as we've gone through the budget process, and we have lived within the budget that we need to be able to bring together, anticipating and growing our behavioral health services to have more revenues to help support the needs of the community. And with respect, I would say that the issues with this in community have changed over the past few years. We have a meth and drug issue. We have a homelessness issue, and it is impacting in human services.
If I may ask further, what is unknown to us at the beginning of the year that then causes us to have the kind of deficit that we experience? Aren't we able to foresee these things? Yes, I recognize things are getting to be pretty bad in many respects, but can't we see that and consequently come up with a budget that is appropriately sized to the service?
And we're aiming to do that.
But we haven't to date. For what reason? To date, we've come up with budgets that don't match the actual expense.
Well, I think I would offer up that I think that when we talk about the actual budget process, and this is one of the risk areas, when we talk about the budget, we identify a budget that we can actually legally pass. Our budget must balance when we put it together. And one of the key areas that we as a county government have been struggling with is inadequate levy to meet basic needs within our organization. And we have identified that on multiple fronts, whether it be highway or in other service areas. And it is becoming more problematic as we move forward. And so when we see departments taking steps that will get us into a position where we can start reducing that overall cost long term, that is what we need them to do. And so that trajectory is happening in this department. It is not happening as quickly as we would like because it takes a long time to move large systems. So I think that when it comes to our budget, a good faith attempt is made to put together a budget that is realistic, that they believe that they can achieve. I will say that there are a number of projections, even in the request for service. When you compare what they projected the original request for service based upon, the requests exceeded what they had thought significantly. And so we have a number of factors, not only on the front end from a revenue perspective and inadequate revenue, but we also have very high demand, much higher demand than was originally projected. So I believe that there is a good faith attempt here to make this budget work within the confines of what we have available.
Supervisor Krant, please.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I can talk loud. Mine's taped.
It should have been on though. Was it amber color?
I haven't touched anything.
There you
Hello?
go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I guess my point, Administrator Schaaf kind of touched on some of the mitigating factors, because I do see a lot of mitigating factors that were listed in this presentation as far as the budget goes, in changing the work that's being done. That's not just about the budget, but about doing the right thing for the children and families that we serve. I would say meth and some of the other issues are affecting a lot of departments. In fact, when you see the jail population study report, that's one of probably the biggest factors that our community is facing. It's not just human services. As a nurse case manager, in the work that I do 8 to 5 every single day, in working with counties all over Wisconsin, we refer folks to human services for behavioral health, crisis, all of the things that were really, I guess, listed or at least touched on. And I think, the development of the outpatient behavioral clinic is a mitigating factor, especially when you are working with a client who can't get in anywhere else for services, sometimes for months. And I experience that pretty much every day. The other thing I wanted to quickly ask or touch on for board members that were not part of that joint meeting with administration, human services, and finance and budget, with the work that's being done with ALEA, that was kind of noted, the changes that are happening. Wisconsin is looking to Eau Claire County and saying, hey, we want to follow sort of the work that's being done because it is innovative and it is making a difference. With that, I heard, consulting with the cohort ALEA. Could you just clarify for the board how much that cost the county to work with ALEA?
So we are part of a cohort in which we were invited to be part of it, and we don't pay to be part of that cohort. And that direction and support to be able to help shift our system in a new way and build a new system to be able to respond in a new way for child welfare. This is being asked for at the federal level for states to do this. We're part of a cohort that then our state is interested in being able to make this shift. This is federal direction and legislation to move and change how we are working in child welfare, because the system is no longer working. It takes time to be able to do that. And when I talked to our manager, who shared with me about 5 youth who were reunified out of the high residential care facilities, I said, tell me more about why now? Why not before? Or what is it that's different? Would you have done this before? And it would not have been done in the same way. It is not how staff have been trained in terms of their thinking and approach. And so we are seeing a change in those efforts that we're making.
Thank you.
Supervisor Pagonis, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have so many comments written down, I barely know where to start. So I'm going to start with Ms. Cable. No one is doubting your sincerity or even your ability to run the large department that it is. And I hope that you don't view our comments as being a criticism so much as being alarming. Mm-hmm. So for 2018, the projection I believe you gave is 2.3 million over. Mm-hmm. And that's assuming we get an end of the year dollar amount of an additional 1.7 for the CCS reimbursement, correct?
Yes.
And we believe we're going to get that. We hope we're going to get that.
we have no reason to believe we would not get it.
So with the 2.3 million over, and you started your comments that your tax levy represents about 27% of the overall budget. But in fact, when we add in the 2.3, you've jumped from 27% to 34%, correct?
So that was the budgeted amount, and I would agree with you.
Right,
I was
okay.
stating from a budgeted amount.
So I want to go back to Supervisor Wilkie's question regarding mitigation, and this is going to be on point. It's not going to sound like it immediately. But the other day, I was in a shop and I ran into a department head from this county. And this individual indicated to me that there was some concern about going over budget. And this individual indicated a delay in hiring for the purposes of hanging on to a little bit of extra money. I note that in your budget proposal for 2019, you requested many additional employees. My count was 27, but I don't know if all of them were approved. What is the status of hiring, and has Supervisor Wilkie talked about best practices in the jail, Supervisor Cronk talked about jail population going up. We know we're not using best practices in the jail because we can't afford the additional correctional officers. What are you doing in a similar fashion to mitigate relative to your day-to-day operations, given your awareness that so far through April, you're 1,445,000 over?
So similarly, we are holding off on bringing positions forward. Similarly, we look at that in every aspect in terms of training and areas in which that we're able to, that we don't need to, that we aren't forced to respond to from a crisis perspective. So yes, we are on a daily basis evaluating that from that perspective.
So are you seeing then the caseloads increasing for each individual social worker?
Well, it depends upon the area, and yes, we have had an increase in caseloads. We are increasing in areas in CCS, which is beyond the area of recommendation. There is an increase in child welfare with our caseloads. So I don't have all those specific numbers to report to you.
Okay.
I'm looking at Supervisor Henning. I believe you have your light on. Is that correct?
Supervisor Anton asked my question.
All right. Thank you very much. Supervisor Mowry, please.
Just in the interest of full disclosure, I sit on the Human Services Committee. I'm also a member of the jail population study. And I think Supervisor Cronk brought up one of the points I wanted to make was that if we didn't have a meth epidemic, we wouldn't have this problem in human services or in the jail. We wouldn't be sending prisoners to other jails. And as a social worker, I also know that probably the worst thing we can do is to hold off on hiring positions. And when you have a crisis and children are in need of placement. And the meth epidemic, it's not as easy. It's a much harder addiction to treat. And the home is contaminated and the children have to be removed and placed somewhere. And I applaud the department for trying to stress the family placements and trying to not only save money, but save lives and save trauma that would be inflicted upon the children. I'm also confused about something that I know is coming up later, which is a resolution. I did not attend the joint meeting between the administration, budget and finance, and human services, but my understanding that there have been conversations as a result of that have already initiated a fiscal review through Clifford Larson and Anderson, is it? Allen. Okay, and I just wondered if you could give us an update on that.
So I really can't give any more of an update than what the Administrator Schaaf did, except
Okay.
that we've had a couple conversations and are awaiting a proposal back from those conversations with them. And that proposal is going to Norb, our county finance manager, and then we would be able to speak to it more directly. And except for the general comment of that the intention is to really have someone come in and look at the structure and processes that we have in place. In our initial conversation with the person, her name is Bridget, she was complimentary. And our processes and how we go about doing our business. Again, this was a phone conversation, but what she was hearing and picking up on sounded just to her, and certainly wasn't supportive to as we were requesting for this review, but wasn't giving any indication that there was a crisis.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Selges.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm trying to understand our financial relationship with the state. Seems at the very simplest form, the problem here is that our expenses, by virtue of the services that we have to provide, are going up beyond what we projected. And to the degree that your budget comes from tax levy, we know that that tax levy every year is fixed. So you fix the amount of tax levy at the beginning of the year, and then your expenses are more, so you're clearly going to miss there. But the other part of your revenue stream comes from the state, is my understanding. So just, do we get a fixed amount from the state every year, or is it scalable with the number of people who we serve? I'm assuming it's scalable.
So what I would say is that's not an easy answer. And because when we serve individuals, it depends upon what kind of services we're providing, which affects what kind of funding then we are receiving. We get a general allocation of children and families based upon prior years, and probably a magical formula that I can't tell you right now, from children and families. And that's the area in which is going to, if the governor signs that in his budget, we would see an increase for 2020.
But that's fixed.
So there's some, it's pretty much fixed. Yes, the increases that are very minute that occur because they've negotiated increased rates with providers, but pretty much it becomes a fixed rate, fixed amount. We also serve those families, though, in other areas of the department. And so through behavioral health, through economic support, through different types of services. And so funding comes from different places in our service when we are serving families.
Okay, but generally your revenue stream at the beginning of the year is fixed. If your caseload goes up by 20%, you don't have the opportunity to pass that 20% on to the state. Is that correct?
Not in, well, in some areas you may be able to get a reimbursement depending upon the caseload. So like in CLTS or in economic support, you're going to recover some of those dollars if your amount goes up. So there's some fixed formula areas that vary depending upon the funding area.
But some of them are scalable, would scale up as your services increase.
Yes,
And then when we seek those reimbursements, do we basically get fully reimbursed, or is there a built-in shortfall that we eat? For example, you increased, workload went up 20%. Let's just assume you could bill the state 20% more. Do we bill them 100% of what our costs are, or do we only get a portion of that?
No.
So there's a built-in gap that's always building.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. That answers my question.
Yes.
Thank you. And I do want to remind folks, this is a report, and really the questions should be in regard to the report. Hopefully the next time we get an update, which undoubtedly will be relatively soon, you've had enough background this time that we will have a little more expedient conversation. but thank you for all your comments. And now, the next item on our agenda is the jail population report. Tiana Glenns. And if other members are going to participate as well, please introduce them, will you?
What do I gotta do again? Okay, hopefully it's gonna come up. Or not. Dana, where are you? Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're here today, and there's a few of us still here, to talk to you about the jail populations report. Back in 2018, on December 18th, you passed a resolution charging the CJCC, the Criminal Justice Council, to look at the jail population and the reasons for the increased population, some of the trends, and some of the housing out of county that we're experiencing. Should probably back up. I'm Tiana Glenna. I'm the Criminal Justice Manager. I am the staff to the CJCC. We have some of the members sitting over here, and some are in the viewing area here also. So when we, what I'm going to do today, it's going to be very brief, I hope. We'll see. It's a large topic for you to digest and understand. We had 6 months to look at the data, to look at the trends, and try to develop a report that will bring all the elements. The criminal justice system is a complicated system, and trying to understand the drivers as to what's causing our jail population to increase. And we've heard a lot of other issues that we're seeing across the county, especially with the methamphetamine. That's just one of the facets that we're seeing. So today you have the report. I hope everybody has it. You're going to take the next month. We're coming back in July to talk more, especially focusing on the cost-benefit analysis, some of the Department of Corrections data, and some of the recommendations. So right now, I'm going to give you a little landscape of what this report is, some of the elements within the report, and answer any questions if you have them. Yes? Samantha.
Actually, Robin, you would have gotten it from Samantha Cole in my office.
Oh, okay, it was in that one, thank you.
Yes. It was sent separately because it was so large.
Okay.
Yes, it is. So we're going to be talking about the focus of the report, the review of the sections, a brief history, and the next steps. So when you have the report, it's 84 pages. However, 45 is the content, and then you have some of the appendixes, some of the supportive data that we have. That's not all the information we have, but that's what we're going to be relaying to you. So on the board that you cannot see are the members of this committee, and I have a few of them standing here. Our chair and co-chair are District Attorney King and Supervisor Maury. Where'd you go? There you go. We're our co-chairs. Staff was myself and Dana Swanstrom, our data analyst, Dana. And then we have a list of our committee members, and you can see it's a broad spectrum of people from all departments that worked on this committee over the 6 months. Plus, a lot of these members, this has not been looked at in isolation. We have been reviewing this since 2017 when we started housing out, and we'll talk about some of the other work that we've done. So I am going to bring, if I miss anything, Gary, on this the next slide, but these are the sections. I'm going to bring District Attorney King up just to talk about the summary as to what we found. But the next slide shows the sections of the report. Now, the sections of the report align with the resolution that you passed. So each of these categories are areas that you asked, or I asked you to support us in reviewing. So we talked about the summary, an overview of the system impact, the background. We have done a lot in Eau Claire County and are known as the leader in a lot of this work. So we have done a lot of work since 2009 in the realm of trying to mitigate our jail population and entrance into the system. Analysis of the jail population, what's causing all this, the summary of the secure beds, what's happening when we have to transfer a person out of our facility, the cost-benefit analysis, where's that tipping point of do we build, don't we build, how many beds can we house? The legislative review, what's the impact that we're going to have if things change at the legislature, how is that going to impact us at the county? Department of Corrections, we know that they're a driver in our jail, but what does that mean? And how are they working in their system, which has changed significantly, especially in Eau Claire County over the last few years? Evidence-based programming options in the community, what else can be done? Want me to keep going? So when we talk about the summary, the first section that you're going to review is an overview of the entire system. The report is largely based on data. A lot that we do within the CJCC is data-driven. So if we're looking at measuring something, we will try to collect as much data and make our decisions based on that data that we're receiving. Data that is in the report gives a history and the future projections. So you'll see many graphs that our analyst has pulled together based on the data from the jail and the clerk of courts and the district attorney's office. We can't tell you a magic solution for this. There's no single driver that we can point to that says this is, if we stop doing this, this will reduce our jail population. It's a complex issue that we're facing. And other national trends to mitigate jail populations have been implemented. We hear a lot of other counties going, oh, well, we reduced our misdemeanor population in our jail, which is great. We're already doing it. We hardly have any misdemeanors in our jail. We are significantly using our order-ins from law enforcement. They are not bringing in people into the jail unless they need to be there based on statutes and mandatory arrests. So much of what we've done, or that national trends are showing, we've already implemented it in Eau Claire County. When we look at the background, we talked about the resolution and the need for it because it was a hot topic. We needed a collective group of people to come together and look at this in detail and give you a report and more information so you can make a better decision as to what do we do about this. And it also helped get us more focused on what we should do and could do in the next 2 years. Historical studies. We have reports. We have the Durant study. We have the Barlin projections that were done before we built the new facility. Eau Claire County and the state of Wisconsin are the National Institute of Corrections sites for evidence-based decision-making initiative. We are, in the state of Wisconsin now, the one and only state in the nation that is supported by NIC, National Institute of Corrections, to look at evidence-based practices. There's many of us on this committee that go to other jurisdictions throughout the nation and talk about what we've done and some of the innovative and new approaches that we're implementing in the county to help not only mitigate the jail population, but do the right thing so we don't bring other people into the jail system or into the criminal justice system. These are just a few items of things that the CJCC has done since 2000. I was hired in 2008. We started EBDM in 2010. These are some of the areas that we've looked at that if not for this, our jail population would be worse, guaranteed. You cannot read this. However, it is projections, and this is not the most recent. I believe Dana has, this goes to 2017. Our data analyst has this projected out to 2018, and this shows the criminal misdemeanors, the criminal felony filings that we have, that you've been hearing a lot of. Our felony cases have increased significantly. Our jail bed days. It also has, this is in the report, it also has some projections. If we're on this trend of our population, what will our population look like? So here's a big one that we found. 79%, again, 79% of our jail population is only there for 10 days or less. 53% of that is there for 0 to 2 days. We can't do much with that population. They're in and out very quickly. And that's intended. Some of that population, they're mandatory arrests, they're warrants. We cannot work on that population unless we come up with some innovative solution that we don't have to arrest certain people, which would be against the law and probably wrong to do. The jail has little control of who comes in and when they leave and how they leave. So the jail is managing those people that are coming into the system. We have some, in the next slide, I will show you what that population looks like in those population trends. Decision-making process for when and who should be transferred out of county. Captain Brzezina diligently goes through the list and says, is this person appropriate? Do we need to transfer or not? It's not made in a vacuum. He's talking to his staff. He's making tough decisions on who and why do we have to transfer people. This is the slide that's also in your report that talks about, you can't see it again, but I apologize, the days. So 53.49, and this is our former analyst came upon this when we started looking at the jail trends and looked at 1 month. And he's like, I wonder what this would be the previous month. And then he did the whole year. It was eerily consistent with the number of people and the percentages that were being released in those categories. They hardly varied. So we're very confident in stating these percentages on average for either month and or year. We are opposite of the national trend. We release 73% within less than 10 days. 79% in less than 10 days. See, this is why we have a data analyst, because I am not one. Most jurisdictions don't do that. Their 79% is staying that 10 plus days, the 30 days, the 50 days, the 100, the 360 days. So our DAs and the courts are really processing these people through the system. You're also going to see what's the driver, why are they there? And this is in the document that you have. Another significant fact that we have is 16% of our population is there for pretrial holds only. Pretrial holds means they made contact with law enforcement, charged, they did something they shouldn't have been doing that was significant enough that they had to be brought into jail. They do not, the 16% do not have a probation tie. When I asked nationally what the average percentage for pretrial holds was, Kentucky, who has a pretrial release system, significant pretrial release system, they're at 27% pretrial holds. So us being at 16, they're like, wow, you guys are doing really well. So we'll keep looking at that data and why are we at that point, and we have some other issues that may be coming forward if we start looking at pretrial supervision. That's also in the report. I'll talk to you about that in a second. Cost-benefit analysis. So the jail population is extremely erratic. So as a county, we need to look at this on a regular basis. What's the trends? What's the ups and downs? Why is it? And is there any trends that we can identify that we can help start mitigating? We spent $174,000 in 2018 housing inmates out of county, but likely that financial concern will not be the driving force in building out the fourth pod. What does that mean? If we do or if we don't. Bed availability in other counties will likely drive the need for the fourth bed, because we are not in isolation. Other jurisdictions and other counties are having to ship the methamphetamine population. I keep going to that, but that's our trigger right now, is up in these other jurisdictions. They're having more holds in their jails. So those bed availabilities are dwindling. The fact is that it will take 2 years. If you choose to build out that fourth pod, it's going to take us at least 2 years to even get that fourth pod built. So what do we do in the interim? And that's what this committee is working on right now, is how do we mitigate that increase in the jail, yet keeping an eye on the safety of the community and the client, and serving the client the best that we can. Now, this is the what if, the legislative review. 3 main things that may be hitting us here in the next year. Currently, OWIs are not criminalized. So what happens if it does get passed, if they are criminalized? We're estimating, based on the previous numbers, 300 to 400 convictions per year of OWI first. At a minimum, one day, 300 to 400 additional bed days. How are we going to handle that? If they choose to have a mandatory for the 5th and 6th offenses become a mandatory prison sentence, what impact is that going to have on us? If they have to go to prison, the time that we have to wait to get them transferred to a prison bed is significant. So we're looking at just an estimate of 1,100 bed days, additional bed days. What does that do to our system? That's not in the Huber side, that's in the secure side. One of the big trends that's happening right now that we're working on is the elimination of cash bail. How do we go to a risk-based system? And I just received a grant. We're working with a pretrial screening assessment. And we know that if that screening assessment is going to rank out the risk of that person and how do we supervise them on pretrial. If we're starting to identify the risky people, the people that we should be afraid of, that are going to hurt themselves or hurt others, we choose to keep them in jail, what's going to happen to our jail population? So how do we manage that and how are we going to monitor that? Next section is Department of Corrections. So at any point in time in the jail, 1/3 or less of the jail population is under the Department of Corrections control. Mike Felton, right here, Department of Corrections, went significantly into that in this section, so that'll be laid out pretty well. Felony filings have doubled in the last decade, and this is continuing to rise. We see that in the DA's office. We see that in people being placed on supervision for felony cases. Compared to the state data, Eau Claire County has more individuals on supervision and fewer people sent to prison. This is a good thing for the person, possibly. It's bad for us because we have to supervise them in the community. And DOC, and Mike goes into this, has done a lot with evidence-based programming and how to mitigate their return to jail and providing them the services that they need in the community. But the people that are in the jail on probation supervision, we've tried everything with them and they just continue to fail. And so now they're sitting in the jail with us. We have fewer opportunities to decrease the jail population because of the programs that we have already implemented. I just mentioned that as to some of the initiatives that Department of Corrections has been doing. The last section of the report is that evidence-based programming in the community. What else can we be doing? Eau Claire County is working at establishing a reach-in and a warm handoff for services. We have a grant with Department of Human Services and 2 staff that are over there, a crisis worker and a jail transitions person that is trying to get those people that are there the 10 days or more, do an assessment with them and determine what services that they need to be more successful in the community or connect with their current social worker or probation and parole. Stepping Up initiative, mental health is a huge trigger in our jail. We don't want those that are truly mentally ill in our jail. So how can we deflect them in the beginning and get them the services that we need? Not mitigating the crimes that they committed, but if we can separate it at some point, addressing their issues up front before they come into the system. Cultural, competent, community-based diversion and reentry programs. That ties in all that we've been doing. And it's a lot of the work that we have been doing inside the community and the county. But the county, remember, the county criminal justice process is this section of that person's lifespan. We cannot, in the criminal justice system, manage this person for 2.5 years, which the methamphetamine is going to take. So we have to have those warm handoffs to something else in order to help that person be successful. I already mentioned the EBDM work that we have done and the number of the programs that we have already implemented. So that is the nuts and bolts on a high-level scale of the report that you guys have in front of you. Have I missed anything? Or breezed over anything that we want to?
No, I think in summary, it's a very complicated report, but there are some very well-known factors that Tiana pointed out in terms of you read through that report, and if you really dig into the data, and I'm really proud of the data foundation that's in there.
I'm sorry, can we get you close to the microphone?
The report has more data than you're ever going to want to see about our jail population, but it's going to inform all of you of how our jail operates, how our jail used to operate, and what the projections are going forward for the next several years. Had we continued to operate as we did in the past, our jail population today would be 494 people. We're not even close to that. From 2008 to 2017, our felony case filings doubled. The average daily population went up 11 people, 276 to 287 people. That's mitigation. Understand how people go in and out of our jail. 53% are there 2 days or less. 2 years ago, 16% were there for 30 days or more. That number went down last year by 3%. Only 13% of the people in our jail last year were there for 30 days or more. So we're doing many, many good things to keep that population at a manageable number. We'll continue to do that, but understand when you go through that report and you're looking for, the one magic fix, it's real difficult because of all of the things that are implemented now. I challenged our new data analyst to attack all of the information that he was provided with, and he thought he might come up with that one magical deal, and he's fast realizing it's not there. That doesn't mean we give up. It just means we have to continue to do what we've been doing for the last decade and get better at it. And so I think we're fortunate. We have counties like Marathon. They spend over $1 million a year housing out of county. Ashland sends people down to Medford. And that's another part of the report that I think is critical in terms of your review. Understand the projections going forward of what will and will not be available out of county and at what cost. And so I think it's a tremendous report. I'm sure it's going to generate a lot of questions. And I think when we come back in July, we'll try to continue this presentation and look at it from a forward-going perspective. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions. Oh, excuse me, Supervisor Pagonis.
I have a question of Mr. Felton, who hasn't. Sorry. It appears the vast majority of bookings are PO holds, and when we look at the length of time, the majority PO holds 30 days or greater. And I'm wondering if there's any activity on a state level that would help the counties deal with things like PO holds. I'm not indicating we don't need them, but we need some reimbursement, and wondering whether there's anything afoot.
Sure. So I can talk to it. It sounds like there's about 3 questions there. So let's address them in order. First of all, you said there's a lot of bookings that are PO holds, right?
Yes.
And that's what it looks like. In the numbers in your packet, you're going to find out about 1/3, 33% are the actual people that are in the jail under DOC supervision. Like, we have some control over them. And that's different than the overall bookings. A lot of times there might be a probation hold initially issued and dropped right away, and they're held there for a pretrial reason or otherwise. So the actual booking numbers that the jail runs from their dashboard, from their Spillman software, shows that that's a higher number than 33%. So we always have to kind of look through it and show that that's more accurate, that 33%, than the overall, number of bookings there.
It's still a big number.
Oh, I agree it is. But they remain there for other reasons than PO holds. Does that make sense to everybody? They might be initially booked as a PO hold, but they're not kept there as a PO hold. The other part of your question, Estella, was is there something that can be done on a local level to mitigate a number of PO holds? Is that what you're saying? Like as far as
No, I want
mandatory-
reimbursement from the state.
Sure.
I mean, you said they're under DOC supervision.
Sure. So what we have done is we have utilized jail, as you'll see with the numbers there in your report. Jail is an expensive commodity. We're from the state, but we're a community partner, and we know that. I've been in Eau Claire for the past 12 years as a supervisor with DOC. And you'll see, even with the numbers that I have there from DOC, when we're looking at 2002 all the way to 2018 fiscal year, we've seen some significant drops in our use of jail for rules violations and compliance violations. I'm not talking about criminal behavior. I'm talking about rules and compliance, whether it's absconding, not listening to their probation agent, disappearing for a while, etc. Things that are not criminal violations, we're utilizing the jail a lot less. And it is those rules violations that by statute the state reimburses the jail for. So there's part of that still that's happened. It's a good thing, but it also means there's less reimbursement. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I do know, too, just to speak to it, I want to say about 3 years ago in the budget, there was an increase. And if Captain Brzezina is around, I know he could verify. There you are. They did up the rate. There's a big pot of money that the state DOC says we're going to reimburse all jails for any holds that are rules violations. So we're going to keep very close track, let the jail know that's what we're going to reimburse them for. And because it's this big pot of money, the more people that are held for rules violations in many jails means everyone gets a smaller piece of the pie. That was unfortunate. So what they did about 2-3 years ago is they upped the pie, basically. They made it a bigger pie. But if you still have jails or localities that are putting a lot of people in custody for rules violations, they're getting more bites of that pie than what we are, which is unfortunate. So as far as reimbursement otherwise, I don't know what that would look like legislatively.
So in other words, because Eau Claire County is innovative and we're not jailing people for rules violations, we're not able to access that pie.
Well, we do, but maybe not as many bites as other people that are more reckless. Let's put it that way, right?
I get it.
Because we're more responsible.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you very much. In looking, are you finished here now, I'm assuming?
No.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything to add?
No, ma'am.
I have to tell you, as you're listening to these two reports, I hope you're connecting the dots. Because obviously, when we have people go into jails who have children, it has a huge impact on our foster care system and the systems of support for the family while they're in jail. And that is a figure that can change from day to day, week to week.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moratorium final report. Greg Leonardson. It's Leonard, no son. Thank you, welcome.
First off, thank you for allowing us this opportunity tonight to talk about, in essence, the end of the moratorium. But we don't want to look at the moratorium. What we want to do is look forward to the revised Chapter 1704, the Egg Performance Standards and Manure Storage Ordinance, which is before you tonight. I'm Greg Leonard with the Eau Claire County Land Conservation. I am the Land Conservation Manager. Also with me tonight is Amanda Peters. She is our agronomist, and together we'll do the presentation for you tonight. First off, the most important thing I need to do is thank the members of the Egg Ordinance Review Special Committee. You've heard from several of those members tonight. There are others here within the audience who did not speak. They really did a great job. You've already heard from the members that spoke about the diverse group, and you can see the diverse group here. They really took on a task that was, I believe, very significant. They learned about the existing state laws, local laws, statutes, our ability to integrate those into our county code, and have come to you tonight with a presentation of egg ordinance, which we believe is a good step forward. They did this in an amazing amount of time, 8 months. There are other counties which are neighbors of ours who spent 1.5 years and have not gotten to the point that this group got to. So once again, I have to thank you. The Egg Ordinance Review Special Committee's recommendations, which were included in your packet, can be really summarized into 3 major groups, the categories you see here on the screen tonight. I'm going to cover the first and the last portion of the recommendations. Amanda is going to cover the manure storage portions of the ordinance. So just try to remember that there's 8 months worth of information and a few screens here tonight. And we will try to keep it very high level. NR 151, or the Egg Performance Standards and Prohibitions, is really what the group concentrated their first efforts on. These standards were adopted by the state of Wisconsin back in 2002, which is why within the ordinance, the 2002 date is very important, because that determines the establishment of an existing facility and state rules, which we also need to follow. These performance standards and prohibitions apply to all agricultural operations, regardless if there's livestock on the operation or not, and regardless of size. The egg performance standards include things which all farmers must follow, which include things for cropland and erosion control on cropland areas, nutrient management plans, and protection of the stream banks from tillage. Operations with livestock must also prevent runoff of manure from their feedlots, must have manure storages which are installed properly. If they are not used anymore, properly abandoned. And also for any areas within a water quality management area, which is within 300 feet of a stream, 1,000 feet of a lake, or an area susceptible to groundwater contamination, such as around a well. There are additional things which need to be done for livestock. I am not going to go into the details of these standards because we would be here way too long tonight. The cost of implementing the egg performance standards within the county is a challenging thing for us. The state requires the ability for us to provide cost share for several of these practices. We do have information on the Fall Creek subwatershed. This is an area which our office had applied for and has received a Department of Natural Resources grant to pursue these egg performance standards. So this is one small portion of the county which we've actually done some analysis on. What we developed within our grant, we are targeting the highlighted ag performance standards, the cropland ag performance standards, and the closure of manure storage structures. The reason we targeted those practices within this grant, today's farm economy, those are the things the farmers can afford to do. Our grant focused on those things. Within that sub-watershed of the county, that watershed represents 6.5% of the county. Within that sub-watershed, we estimate we're going to need approximately $200,000 to develop nutrient management planning. And approximately that much money also to take care of the cropland and other erosion control practices. So that's within that sub-watershed, just a cost estimate for those practices. As I said, Amanda's going to cover some of the things in reference to the manure storage ordinance.
Thank you, Greg. So now at this point, I'm going to talk about some of the specific things that we did to change the manure storage portion of the ordinance. The very first important thing that we did was clarify closure of manure storage ordinances. Our previous ordinance was very fuzzy what happens with manure storages that are no longer used. We've now updated that to be consistent with state rules, and we've clarified that closing old manure storage facilities requires a permit from our office and requires the following of NRCS Natural Resource Conservation Service standards to do so properly. The second thing that we clarified in this new ordinance was waste transfer systems. These are systems that are usually installed in conjunction with the manure storage pit. They include things like pipes, pumps, reception structures, channels, things like that that are going to move manure from one place to another. We clarified that these systems will also require permits from our office and will also need to follow state standards as well. The last two things that we did to update the ordinance were to incorporate a certificate of use, and we also are adjusting the fee schedule for permitting, and I will touch on those here. So, like I said, we are now incorporating a certificate of use into the ordinance. We've always had a construction permit, which is going to be the permit that you apply for to build the manure pit. You apply for it once, and our office reviews it to make sure that the pit is going to be designed according to standards. What we are now proposing to do is, once that pit has been constructed, we want to make sure that it is operated in a safe manner and has been installed according to the standards and the designs that were originally proposed to our office. Again, it ensures that the structure is operated correctly, and we will not be charging a fee for this. We will require some documentation from the farmer on an annual basis, like the nutrient management plan or the final design documents, but again, no fee associated with the certificate of use. And then this leads us into the updated fee structure. We did analyze, staff time that it takes to review these permits in our office, and we adjusted these numbers accordingly. The closure for manure storage facilities, the fee for that permit has remained the same at $220. However, we are suggesting that we parse out the permit fees for new or altered facilities based on the size of the footprint of the liner of that storage. So we are actually reducing the fee slightly for some of these smaller storages to $450, and then we are slightly increasing the fee for some of these larger facilities to $750. Again, just kind of based on the staff time that it takes to review some of these larger plans. And then once construction actually occurs of these, we spend a lot of time on site making sure that things are installed according to plan. Larger pits require more time on site to do that. That is all that I had to touch on for the manure storage portion of the ordinance. I'll give it back to Greg.
Thank you, Amanda. Just adding one last little thing, the certificate of use will actually allow us to help track the farmers following NR 151. So that's part of our reason for incorporating the certificate of use. Livestock sighting is one of the state rules which are available to local governments if they would like to establish local ordinances or licensing rules for sighting of livestock facilities. The sighting law potentially restricts the county or a town's ability of what they can or cannot do in regards to agricultural or livestock facilities. The Ag Ordinance Review Group tackled this item last. This ended up being a complicated process in that if Eau Claire County wanted to incorporate some of the ideas for livestock sighting, we would not be able to start at anything less than 500 animal units. But yet, the Ag Ordinance Special Committee wanted to have uniform rules across the county. That was one of their goals. So adopting livestock sighting would have now created, again, two sets of rules for large operations and for small operations. They wanted to have uniformity across the county. So going through the process of reviewing the different rules, regulations available to them, the Ag Ordinance Review Special Committee's recommendation was to not adopt livestock sighting, to incorporate NR 151 Ag Performance Standards into county code, which would be uniform across the county. So the ordinance as before you was presented and reviewed by the Groundwater Advisory Committee back in May, and they have passed a resolution supporting its adoption. The ordinance before you tonight was also reviewed by the Board of Health at their May meeting, and they have passed a resolution in supporting of the resolution before you tonight. Over the last 8 months, the Ag Ordinance Committee came out with I think a very workable product. This is definitely an accomplishment for them. Also, on your desk tonight, you should have had a copy of our Land Conservation Annual Report. As you would be able to see, our office is busy with many other things, so just to know that there's things besides the ordinance which we have been dealing with. But on behalf of Amanda and myself, I just would like to thank you for your time tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming. Any questions? I don't see any. Thank you very much. We can move on to the other items on our agenda at this point. In your packet, you will see 2 written reports, the contingency report and the vouchers over $10,000. Also, the next item on the agenda is the presentation of petitions, claims, and communication. There are 3 rezoning requests that have been received, and also communication from the town of Fairchild and the village of Fairchild, and both of those will be referred to by Finance and Budget. There are no first reading ordinances or resolutions by members. And so on to the standing committees. And the Committee on Administration is the first that we will be looking at, and file 1920-21.
Creating a nonpartisan procedure for the preparation of legislative and congressional redistricting plans.
And a motion by Robin Leary, Supervisor Leary, and a second by Supervisor Wilkie. And Supervisor Wilkie, will you speak to this, please?
What you have before you in Resolution 22 is exactly what it states, supporting the federal Medicaid expansion. Obviously, this will, whoops, excuse me, I apologize. Wrong page. Okay, Resolution 21, nonpartisan procedure for the preparation of legislation, congressional redistricting. This is something in the past that this board has taken up. We've been asked by Buffalo County, as well as this is being sent or being considered by all 72 counties. It really boils down to both parties historically have gerrymandered around with their districts, and essentially when they're drawing the lines, the legislators are picking their voters. Now, this clearly is not how democracy should look. The voters should be picking the legislators. What we're asking through this resolution is that they set up a nonpartisan board. I've been advised that 12 other states already do this. In fact, one is, I know, is Iowa. The Administration Committee voted unanimously that we should introduce, should approve this resolution, and asks for your support. At this time, I do also, I believe, nope, this is the one I don't need any amendment on. I'm okay.
Thank you for that explanation. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, would you please take your keypads and vote your preference, supporting or not, on this resolution? And Supervisor Gatlin, thank you. And that passes unanimously by those who are here. There are 3 absent. Moving on to the next resolution, 1920-22. And again, go ahead, please.
Supporting federal Medicare expansion.
And an explanation by Second Vice Chair Jerry Wilkie.
First, we probably need a motion on this.
Oh, a motion, please, by Brandon Supervisor Buchanan, and seconded by Supervisor Hennig. Now we'll try that again.
One, supporting federal Medicaid expansion. Before I go further, I need to do an editorial amendment here that Corp Counsel advised. You'll notice on line 14, it states 100 and 138. Well, what needs to be inserted behind 100 and 138 is percentage, 100% and 138% of the federal poverty line. So I would make that amendment at this time.
And is there a second to that amendment by Supervisor Russell?
Like I said, it's an editorial change. I ask your support for the amendment.
All right, any other comments in regard to the amendment? Seeing none, I'm going to do a voice vote on this. All in favor of the amendment, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, and the motion carries and the amendment is approved.
Thank you. Now speaking to Resolution 22 as amended once. As you can see there, we're asking them to, the state to accept the federal Medicaid expansion dollars. In particular, I would draw your attention to the fact that our City County Board of Health has already gone on record with a very similar resolution that they have forwarded on to our legislators. As indicated, when we're talking about the percentage of 100% to 138% of federal poverty level, that would affect nearly 1,400 individual residents right here in our Eau Claire community, as well as it would have an impact of a savings of close to $46 million just in our county, and $324 million statewide. So Administration Committee reviewed this resolution and respectfully request your support.
Thank you for that explanation. Supervisor Neiman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As the County Board Representative to the Board of Health, I just wanted to encourage support for this resolution. The acceptance of Medicaid expansion is the basis for the proposed state budget increases in health and human services. The investments that are potentially realized will benefit all citizens of Eau Claire County, not just those on Medicaid. This kind of savings will also allow investments in priorities that have been identified by the citizens of Wisconsin, but also by the Board of Health Eau Claire County Community Health Assessment, which includes mental health, substance abuse, alcohol and tobacco abuse, chronic disease, and obesity. The savings will also help to mitigate the crisis that is occurring in long-term care facilities and direct care workers, and hopefully can end the wait list on the Children's Long-Term Support Waiver Program. If Medicaid expansion is not accepted, we will have to just tread water and maintain the status quo. Medicaid is a partnership with between the federal government and the state. The Affordable Care Act made that partnership beneficial to the states, so I encourage support for this resolution so we can take advantage of that.
Thank you. Supervisor Buchanan.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that we had some very long presentations given to us on the whole situation of our health department, over $2 million over budget. We had a presentation on the jail issue with the possibility of a fourth pod. And all of that comes right back to what is in this resolution right here, over $300 million in state savings, $46 million in county savings, directly expanding services, as we just heard from the previous speaker, services of mental health, of treatment, things that could help people, help our budget on the county level with the Health and Human Services, and also help people get the help they need to maybe not go to jail for the first time or get recidivism due to mental health services, due to food share, and having that kind of security. I just think that the only way that a person could, the only fiscally responsible approach would be to accept this basically free federal money and use it to get services to the people who are in the most desperate need for help.
Thank you for those comments. Anyone else wishing to speak to this issue? Seeing none, would you please take your keypad?
This resolution hasn't.
Yes, indeed. Would you please take your keypad and vote on this resolution as amended once? And that resolution passes unanimously. Now, the next item on our agenda, 1920-027.
A resolution in support of naming the park to be developed in the 4th Street Greenway as the Veterans Tribute Park.
We look for a motion by Supervisor Lavelle and a second by Supervisor Neiman. And an explanation, I'm going to turn to Supervisor Beckfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
There you go.
Rarely in our tenure do we have an opportunity to take a rare opportunity to honor those people who have not just gave blood, sweat, and tears, but some gave their lives. D-Day was just a couple weeks ago, and it was very emotional for me. But this resolution is being brought forth from our 4 veterans, one who is not here tonight, Burt Moritz, Supervisor Moritz, who sent me an email in support of couldn't be here. He had a family emergency and was unable to be here. Around the country, there are veterans parks. Matter of fact, there's more veteran parks than there are any other parks in the country. This one is extremely unique, and I'm extremely proud of, because they say, I want to use their terminology that someone said, and I thought it was very appropriate, because again, they agree. Celebrate the warrior, not the war. This park is about the people of the Chippewa Valley who served with honor. What a wonderful thing to have happen. I don't know if any of you have seen the Eau Claire Leader telegram right here a couple weeks ago, where a naval soldier was on board the USS, I gotta make sure I get this right because I don't want to be, trust me, the veterans will be all over my case if I don't get it right. Oklahoma, in Pearl Harbor. He's a fireman, and the fireman was putting out fires when he was consumed by another bomb and burned to death, serving our country. His name was Frank Nichols, and DNA just found he was from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. He was listed as missing in action, unknown. One of the things we talk about is our legacy stones, which I want to thank some of the members of this organization who has purchased one for their family or their loved one already. Thank you very much. They look like this. They're purchased, this is very lightweight in comparison to the one, can you hold up the one that is for the neighborhood association? It's very heavy, isn't it? They're made of granite, and they're a 12 by 12 stone. On this side is a Marine. This is an actual one that will be in the park. And on the back, in the sponsors area, this will be in the honor mall that is by the flags and crest of Eau Claire County. And in the sponsor hometown hero area will be sponsors like Hardee's. And for those of you who don't know, Hardee's gave this project 2 weeks ago $100,000. The stones of the people who served, like this, are in gray. We have almost 300 from our county who died in war. They will be recognized in red granite, easily depictable, be able to see who they are. They gave the ultimate sacrifice of their lives. I wanted to share that with you. This is something that came up from the veterans that is very appropriate. We have a lot of parks here. Carson Park, Owen Park, Randall Park, Phoenix Park, and they have multi-users in there as well. You go to Carson Park, there's the Chippewa Valley Train people. There's the Paul Bunyan Camp, the Chippewa Valley Museum, under a name of a park. And by the way, this is not a park. Right now, it's vacant space. And I'm going to go through the process because the veterans have followed the process like a veteran would. A to B to C. And for those of you who don't know, I am not a veteran. I am the spokesperson for the Veterans Foundation. The two things they asked for is, well, one of which, they didn't want it to be a park that is a museum for weaponry. They wanted it to be about people. The people of the Chippewa Valley. We're not talking about all these great heads of state all around the world. We're talking about the stories of the people of the Chippewa Valley. And there's some great stories. By the way, there are people here tonight that had their parent in the Bataan Death March who survived and lived here. We have people here that worked on Los Alamos. There's a number of other people that have given. Recently, we lost one of our most valuable people, B.J. Farmer. a wonderful man, great philanthropist, bomber pilot. Our World War II veterans are dropping like flies. And right behind him is our Vietnam veterans and Korean veterans. And they paid the ultimate price. And the way the people think about veteran parks is they hold them at the highest honor. And that highest honor would be to name the space after them. And I want to go through a few of the facts that you need to know. If you look on your map, you'll see where this is located. And I could tell you it's located on Forest Street. I could tell you what park is located on Lake Street. Well, that would be Carson Park. How about Barstow Street? Well, that would be Wilson Park. Well, when I go and I talk to businesses about this, I tell them, well, where's the park going to be? Well, I go, it's on Forest Street. And they go, I don't know where that is. And I have to explain to them that it's just north of Phoenix Park. The geographical location of a street is not a very good name for a park. As a matter of fact, it's a name of a street. And sometimes that street has a name of somebody, okay? But the veterans feel, or I would have to say, the general public feels very strongly about having it be a veteran park, to the point of raising millions of dollars to invest in this park. It's not just the city park either, because the Lions Club from Seymour this week is going to donate $18,000 for this project in the city of Eau Claire. So yes, I agree that there are other stakeholders that should be in the park, but I don't think there's a higher honor or anyone that deserves better than our veterans to be said to be in a Veterans Tribute Park about the people of the Chippewa Valley. They will learn by GPS and QR codes. There will be one on this. You'll take your smartphone, you will click on the stone, and the stone will tell the story of the veteran. About the people, it is about the people. The veterans don't want to own a park. As a matter of fact, every dollar, every amenity, every asset that is given to this park is owned by the city, oversaw by the city, and will remain that way. Other organizations who have MOUs with the city, like the ones in Carson Park, and also in this green space, have an MOU that's separate with a definite date of renewal. It is not owned by the city, and the assets that they grow, they get to keep, or donate, or do whatever they want. A couple of things I want to talk about the process now. It's been a long night for me too, but I think this is very important. Again, I want to thank the 4 veterans. I want to say thank you for your service first. We need to say that. Many of us don't say it enough. Again, you see where it's located, and if you look at the top of the page, the North Riverfront Neighborhood Park is named for the neighborhood that it's in. It could have been named Forest Street Park, but they chose to name it after their association. They have a park, it has restrooms, play, swings, etc., and even a garden, sidewalks, etc. And it's a beautiful, beautiful park. And I applaud them for getting that done. It's a beautiful park. To the south is Phoenix Park. And inside that park, if you look, are a number of other entities, and one of which is the farmers market. The process here, the city has a process. And I'm going to try and do this quickly for you because we're all tired. But currently, this is vacant land owned by the city with a geographic designation of a green space, which means it has low maintenance and very low priority. It does not have a name of a park. to upgrade the park's status will increase the upkeep to year-round regular maintenance such as mowing, snow removal, plus additional amenities like a restroom, electricity, paved sidewalks, and lighting. Examples are all in the parks I mentioned earlier. The veteran project has been fully approved by the City of Eau Claire and FEMA. The designs were submitted and approved. And again, all assets will become property of the City of Eau Claire. By the way, the veterans do not have any authority to cut down a tree. In no way will we affect the gardens or their name or whatever. You can see an attached letter that was sent when this came up on May 3rd, telling them there's no intention of doing any of that. We want them to stay there. They've always wanted to be a great partner. One of the things that happened here is a lot of the issues that were brought up have been corrected by the veteran project. Better access to the gardens, hopefully better water, electricity. There'll be a parking lot in the middle for handicapped. There'll be a number, lighting which does not exist. And of course, the city has agreed to do the better maintenance of the property, mowing, etc., if it becomes a park. The veterans have followed every request from A to Z. We could not apply for the name until after the project was approved. The project was approved, they moved to the next step, which includes a 60-day waiting period for comment. That the veterans extended one additional month for comment. The letter requesting the name must be sent to the city, and a 60-day citywide, and I emphasize that word, citywide public comment period must be submitted and properly posted and tallied, which is being done right now. The project has been approved again, like I said. The project, named the Veterans Tribute Park, was submitted in March to city staff and to the Water and Park Committee. The project meets 4 of the qualifying standards that are set forth by the policy. And you only have to have 1. It has 4. I won't go into all that tonight. It will move from this, it will move next to the Water and Parks on June 26th. It will be an up or down vote. If it's voted down, it will not go to the City Council for consideration. If voted up, then the City Council will take it under consideration and action, I believe, on June 8th, if I'm correct. Or July 8th. Huh. Geez, sorry. It's late. The resolution here does not bind the city to anything. It just asks them, please, that this body, who has committed a substantial amount of money to the Honor Mall, where we're going to honor these veterans, name the park what the veterans want it to be asked for. It's not only supported by the veterans, it's obviously supported by the business, and we'll find out the totals, but I'm told it's overwhelmingly supported by the comment period as well. It's my hope tonight, I'm not going to go through the rest of it, that you vote yes, support our veterans, and thank you very much for the long evening tonight.
Thank you for the presentation. Supervisor Buchanan.
Thank you. When we voted earlier this year on the tribute trail, I was one of the people who supported it, and I still do support it quite strongly. There were a number of people who had concerns, and I thought a number of those concerns got addressed. One of the big concerns was how would this tribute trail and the veterans work with the previously established neighborhood, work with the previously established garden. Issues of monuments to the battle itself versus individuals. Are we just going to be showing off a whole bunch of weaponry? A lot of that got taken care of, and I was really proud and excited to see this working relationship that had been built. I have to say, with all due respect, that the process was not at all followed. Period. I got messages from people this past weekend saying, Brandon, what is going on? Supervisor Buchanan, I saw that there is a resolution that is going to be voted on. I can't even access it because the agenda packet for our county board wasn't even on the spot for them to access it until Monday, the day before today. People who had no idea that this was coming. For each of us, if we go back and remember when we voted on the tribute trail, that was the key word that was being used. Trail. Unless I'm mistaken, never once was there a presentation, never once was there a comment saying we want to rename the entire park. More importantly, when I said the process wasn't followed, what I mean is that morally and spiritually, maybe not legalistically. Because why? Why was there no attempt made to reach out and talk to the neighborhood association? Not one attempt. Why was not one attempt made to talk to the gardeners about this renaming? That's not fair. That's not right. One of the things that really gets me about this is, if we look back at a little bit of the history, we have a previously established garden that's been in existence for about 10 years. People put blood, sweat, equity, hard work into making that go in a spot of land that people have overlooked and dismissed and found unimportant. That a group of people said, we find value here and we're going to fight and we're going to do something to make it work. We have a neighborhood that I've been at meetings that this neighborhood has been disparaged. It's kind of often seen, and this happens a lot with lower income communities, where it's overlooked or it's dismissed and not heard. And this is a community that's been working and has made something of it. And now we have a tribute trail that's coming in after it gets approved, after all of the boxes get checked. We have 3 areas. We have an area with green space where people can play, can use as a parkland, a low impact. We have a tribute trail, and we have a garden area. And before the tribute trail is even put in, we're seeing this new proposal come forward, blindsiding all of the pre-existing user groups to rename everything after just that one group that's not even in there yet. I think that this could have been done better and more respectfully, and I think there's still time to do that. I think there is still time for people to actually go forward and have that conversation with the neighborhood association and with the garden before they just unilaterally spring this on everyone, which is why I would like to move to postpone this indefinitely, kill this, give this veterans group an opportunity to actually have that conversation that they should have had before bringing it forward, and then they can have a different resolution come forward after that conversation that should have happened happens.
The motion is to postpone indefinitely?
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion? And a second offered by Judy Gatlin? Further discussion? Please take your keypads and vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have your?
I had pressed it.
And, oh, I'm sorry.
She would have been the next person to speak.
Okay. Is this in regard to this amendment, to this motion? Well, this would be, the conversation now has to, discussion.
It is
has to be-
debatable, so you can speak to the motion to
Yes.
postpone if you'd like.
No, I don't want to, we can vote on postponing.
Alrighty, please take your keypad and vote. And would you like to repeat the motion, please?
The motion is to postpone this resolution indefinitely. A yes would mean you're postponing.
You're in agreement with postponing?
Okay, and it looks to me as though the ayes have it. We have, I can't read, 18 voting to postpone and no not to. And so this is postponed. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda. And that's file 192019.
Amending section 3.15.030 B and C of the code, position and full-time equivalency establishment.
And Supervisor Beckfield, I'm back to you again.
No motion.
Oh, excuse me, I need a motion first. Connie, Supervisor Russell, Supervisor Gatlin seconding. And this is in regard to amending the code for a position and full-time equivalency.
I'm saying it over to Supervisor Gatlin.
All right, thank you. I had forgotten that. Supervisor Gatlin.
I think Supervisor Beckfield knew he would be really wore out after what he had to talk about. Yes, thank you. So this is just a simple ordinance amending the section to add a new classification of employees for our county staff, identifying them as casual employees. This would mean they would have no regular schedule. They'll be on an on-call basis, and they're not eligible, of course, for employee benefits. The criteria is they work a minimum of 2 times every 6 months, but not more than 19 hours in a pay period. It is separate from a temporary employee. It's a casual employee. It's a new, not new, but it's prevalent in HR across the board, across the nation, due to a lot of retirees and people like that going back to work for a short time.
Thank you for that explanation. Are there any questions? Any questions in regard to this change? Seeing none, please take your keypads and vote on this resolution. Supervisor Leary? And has she stepped out? Supervisor Leary, did you vote? And that passes unanimously. On to file 1920-005.
Amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Union.
And we'll need a motion first. I'll get it right. Supervisor Lavelle, seconded by Supervisor Dunning. An explanation by Supervisor Gidson. Oh, where is he? Up here in the middle. There we go.
All right, there we go. Thanks. This request is to rezone 3.98 acres of land from A2 Agriculture Residential District to C3 Highway Business to allow for semi-trucks and trailer parking associated with a trucking business, and then to rezone 1.75 acres of land from A2 to RH Rural Homes to divide the existing residents from the property. This was approved at the Town of Union's Town Board meeting. It was reviewed by the Planning Development Department, recommended approval, and then Planning and Development Committee held a public hearing, and it passed 5-0. It does follow the comprehensive plannings for both the county and the town. Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. Are there any questions, comments? Seeing none, please take your pad and vote. Supervisor Gatlin?
It's giving me trouble tonight.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. We'll move on to the next item of action. And that's file 1920-017.
Supporting the continuation of the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program.
Motion by Supervisor Larry, and seconded by Supervisor Schroffnagel. Explanation by Supervisor Stelgis.
So, as most people probably know, this Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program has been an institution within the state for the past 30 years. It has funded all sorts of things, including projects within the city, acquisition of wild lands that the county has taken advantage of. And it's basically been reauthorized in 10-year increments, and one of those increments is expiring at the end of 2019. So this resolution asks that we continue the program. There have been some efforts to end the program with a concern over some of the accumulated debt that has come from the program. In previous administrations, the amount that we have actually borrowed for that program, we being the state, has been cut dramatically from a peak of $86 million a year to the last couple years down to $33 million. This resolution does not take sides as to how much we want it funded. What it really says is that we would like the program to be continued, and it doesn't state that, but another 10-year term would be great. A number of other counties have already passed similar resolutions. This one, however, is a little bit different in that we did add a clause also acknowledging the need for fiscal responsibility and to begin to reduce debt. So what we're suggesting here is that the program doesn't incur any more debt beyond what the rate at which we are currently retiring existing debt, so that the debt either stays capped or can start to be reduced. I also just noticed that in the most recent budget proposal, which just came out of Joint Finance and approved, what the governor has proposed, and that is only a 2-year extension at current levels of $33 million. And in conjunction with that, they want to appoint a special commission to go evaluate the program further. But I think lending the county's support to that continuation is very important and would ask for your support.
Thank you for that explanation. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to this? Supervisor Cronk?
No, I was actually prior trying to catch in between segments to see if we would be able to take a break, but that was not, that was my bathroom break. There's cupcakes in the back.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Knight.
I just wanted to say I think this is a good idea. Western Wisconsin in particular has made good use of this program. It's set up basically so the local communities receiving these grants have skin in the game. You have to come up with a match. We've used it in bicycle trails in the area. We've used it for a warming house at Tower Ridge. So I think it's been very good for the area, very good for getting people connected with the outdoors. I think it's one of the better programs, and I personally would much rather borrow for land or recreational developments than highways, because land is probably not going to decrease in value over the years where pretty much anything else is going to. So I plan to vote yes.
Thank you. Supervisor Gatlin, did you wish to speak to this? Thank you. Any other comments or anyone wishing to speak to this further? Seeing none, please take your keypads and vote on this resolution. And that's with the exception of one, I believe it carries. Now we come to another file 1920-023.
Authorizing a contingency fund transfer for the Department of Human Services program review.
Is there a motion? Supervisor Henning, seconded by Supervisor Chilsa. Discussion. Who's going to lead this?
I'm sorry, this is coming
Oh,
from finance.
thank you, I'm sorry. I'll see you over there eventually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Pagonis.
Thank you. This resolution has two components. One component is to fund the study. Administrator Schauf stated earlier that it's already started. As of yesterday, I didn't know about that. I met with Finance Director yesterday, and he said that he'd had a conversation with Clifton Larson Allen, but I didn't know that there was an actual study that had commenced. But one piece of this resolution is to take funding from the contingency fund for the purposes of paying for the study. The second component of this, I just need to digress a moment. It was interesting to me that we had a jail population study presented to us today. That kind of study is precisely what we're looking for Human Services. It's a project review. It's not intended to be an audit per se. It's an accounting firm, that's what we expect, that will review the entirety of the Department of Human Services. So that's the one piece, and that's the funding. The second piece of this, and Finance and Budget was pretty specific about this, that there's a great deal of benefit in having a variety of individuals on an ad hoc committee for the purposes of, I'm going to say, for oversight purposes, to help understand from different departmental points of view what they believe is important, and as well as having someone from, having the finance director and having someone from Human Services Board. So it would really be a group that that everyone really has stakeholders. If we think about human resources, there are numerous individuals on the Human Resources Committee who can speak pretty eloquently to the staffing that's going on and being able to have questions that they believe should be considered and examined. So the second component of this resolution is for an ad hoc committee made up of a variety of county board supervisors and staff, and the county board supervisors being from various oversight committees, rather than just having one person from finance and one or two people from Human Services. We felt that having a broader spectrum of individuals made more sense. So I would ask you to support this. We heard from Diane Cable earlier explaining to us that she's clearly aware of the issue. I think she would welcome this. One example of what could be determined in this kind of a program review would be whether or not the department is billing back to the state for all of the different elements that could be billed back. So for example, indirect costs. Are we billing back for all the indirect costs that we can bill back for? And so those are the types of things we're hoping to accomplish in this program review.
Thank you for that information. Anyone wishing to speak to the issue? And it looks like we have Supervisor Beckfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am in support of this because sometimes you don't have the time in your department to do that, and this puts some extra eyes in there, and it gives you an outside perspective with CLA, which I think, and they do 42 counties in the state, so they can do a comparison, which is one of the things I was looking for. I think it's a good practice to bring somebody from the outside to make sure that everything's going right. We're not looking for things. This is not a witch hunt to find things that are wrong. It's to possibly find areas that we can, improve. If you don't sometimes look outside for help, In the mental health area, you don't get healthy, and maybe we need in the mental health area to get some help.
Thank you. Supervisor Wilkie, please.
I'm speaking in favor of this resolution. I was one of the members who voted for it. I would point out, I think it was accurately described by our chair of Budget and Finance, but I would also point out is this, it would not hinder anything that Human Services has already done. In fact, it can follow up very nicely. We were told this evening that they've had a couple of conversations with an audit firm, and they're waiting for a proposal to receive that proposal. That proposal, when it arrives, can be put into the hands of this broader committee. And we heard very clearly tonight that this is an extremely serious situation, above and beyond what we've normally had to encounter. So I speak very favorably about the second part of it, where we broadened out the members of the committee who will look at that scope, look at that review, that proposal that comes in, as well as bringing outsiders, not only through the review and audit process, but we're also calling upon some of our staff, other staff, to assist in this. This isn't just a Human Services problem. This is an Eau Claire County problem. Obviously, the responsibility and the accountability for the deficits that we're incurring rests right here with the 29 of us in the end of the day.
Supervisor Anton.
Yes, I'm in support of this. I'm suggesting that we take a look outside our own group. I'm thinking back to several years ago when I was chair of the board of directors of our nursing home in Augusta, and was aware of much of what we were doing, hopefully. One of the things that we were doing was to have a full-time person look at all of the expenses that could be billed back out of the nursing home based on the level of activity that was given to those people to care for them. And that was a well-structured process. I think we might find a benefit by looking outside of our own organization to others that are doing similar things, not at all like Human Services, but other kinds of billing back to the state or to Social Security or wherever it might be. That there are some lessons to be learned from other folks, and I suggest that we think about that.
Thank you.
I'm in support.
Supervisor Cronk.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I had a couple of, I guess, many questions when this resolution came forward. But the first thing that came to mind when I saw it was reviewing our strategic plan, that we came together as a county and we all had input as to what that would look like and what our goals were. And one of the things that was mentioned as far as communication goes was better internal communication systems to engage and inform county employees and the department heads. As of recent, there was a meeting that brought together 3 departments. And in my experience, and I'm going to humbly say it's not been as long as many of the others on the board, that was the first time that the county administration, Human Services, and Finance and Budget had come together to meet and discuss this, exactly what we're discussing and what has brought about a lot of discussion tonight. I thought that was a good meeting. I think there was some tough conversations. And what I thought, or what I gauged from the situation, was that there was a potential for that meeting or that group of people to come together to discuss this could continue. And those are hard conversations. I don't know when this resolution was coming forth, and I wish that there would have been more opportunity to discuss these ideas or these proposals at that meeting, because that's what we said we were going to do as a goal, and so that's a great opportunity to practice. The other thing that I would bring forward is, yes, There were really hard conversations and a lot of work done on the jail study committee. There was not an outside consultant paid for or hired, and there wasn't even an audit done, an outside audit done. We did that work, and when I say internally, there were a lot of members. It was a broad scope. In some ways, I personally think it could have been broader, but it was a broad scope in doing that work. So I guess one of the points I want to make is we were able to do that, and we did that work within the last 6 months. I would really strongly urge for those committees to be able to come back together. I thought that was what was going to happen, and this seems like it kind of came around the side of communication. I think there's a lot of work that's being done, as you saw in the presentation, and there's been other presentations. Supervisor Pagonis just mentioned that she wasn't aware that there was communication with Clifton Larson Allen, and so that is in the process. I also think that there has been kind of a general, maybe lack of communication, and again, creating that opportunity for the departments to come together, I think is really important. The other thing for this point, I guess I would say, is that Human Services also has open public meetings, just like every other department does. And in my experience in the last 2 years, I haven't seen anybody else from any of the other committees come to listen or to ask the questions. That department is very open, so people want to learn more about the mandates or the services. I hope I can speak and say they're more than welcome. I don't want to speak for Human Services, but I think I can. And the other thing is Human Services is posting on our website monthly updates. I don't know what other departments are doing it monthly, but I know that Human Services is. Those financials were asked for, they're being given. And so to me, this feels possibly duplicative, and it feels like something that we can do. And when I say we can do internally, I don't mean just within Human Services, but I mean within the other departments that we already had the meeting with. So I am not in favor of this resolution. I am in favor of working on better communication and more education, as we said in our strategic plan. And I am also not in favor of spending more on an outside consultant. That work was already, again, initiated with Clifton Larson Allen. I do not support this resolution.
Supervisor Neiman.
Supervisor Cronk has wonderfully expressed the feelings that I have on this issue. The only other question that I have is, since this resolution chiefly concerns Human Services, did anyone approach the Human Services Board with the concerns not addressed at the joint meeting? And if not, why not? My question.
I don't know that we have an answer for that question, but is anyone wishing to take a stab at it? The individual that chaired that meeting, it just so happened, was our county board chair. And he is not here this evening, and so I don't think we can answer it for him. Supervisor Pagonis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In response to Supervisor Neiman, this shouldn't be a surprise. There was a joint meeting that was the topic of discussion, and the idea of having a program review, while it wasn't specifically articulated at that meeting, it shouldn't be a surprise. With regard to Supervisor Cronk's statement, we don't have the information. That's the problem. I read the financials every month from the Human Services Board. I print them, I keep them, I look at what's going on. I pay attention. We don't have sufficient information, and clearly we don't have staff with the expertise to do it. We need outside eyes. With regard to the statement that I didn't realize there was a study going on, I met with our finance director yesterday. A study has not commenced. There was an initial discussion with Clifton Larson Allen. That's as much as has happened as to whether or not they are competent to do the kind of analysis we're requesting. We believe they are. So it was an initial discussion. This is to fund that analysis. We need to have an outside group. We don't have the staff who can do this. It's not the numbers the way the jail studies the numbers. The CJCC has a data analyst that Human Services does not have. We're not here to analyze the numbers or the whys of why we have more children in child protection or more adults in adult protection. We're here to analyze how the billing back is going, whether we're utilizing all of the resources that are available to us through federal and state financing. So it's a much, much bigger analysis than the staff that we have on board who can handle.
Supervisor Beckfield.
Oh, me again. I was going to ask Supervisor Cronk if it would have been helpful to have someone with the jail study, you know, if that would have been something that could have brought some outside information in to help. But, you know, you said you were opposed to the study, and I guess that's all I have to say about that. I just think bringing in some fresh eyes from outside, I invite it all the time in our industry, because we find the best practices that we think we're doing may not be the best practices that are being done somewhere else. And when you have a company like them that has an analyst that does this for their 42 counties, I don't know why you wouldn't bring the person in. You know, Lord knows we wish we would have brought somebody in on a treasurer a lot sooner than we did when he stole a lot of money. So, you know, maybe we should bring in more auditors from the outside more often to check out how things are going. Just a thought.
Supervisor Chilton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Supervisor Beckfield covered my thoughts, so I'm good.
Thank you. Supervisor Russell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding that Clifton Larson Allen is an audit firm, so they're only going to be looking at financial aspects of the operation, or are they equipped or knowledgeable enough to look at aspects of the program management?
Program review. And it would look
Excuse me, and rather than have that conversation, the county administrator is asked to address that issue.
If I may. So, and just to make sure that my earlier comments are clear, Norb Kirk, along with the team in the Department of Human Services, have been working with a representative of Clifton Larson Allen, who is going to be working with them, but it is specifically geared toward looking at potential process improvement in the area of, and I'll bring up the review that I have. It would include information on the overall structure of the accounts receivable, the indirect cost allocation. It would include a look at and a high-level discussion of the current financial reporting structure. And they would actually then also talk about how they have the different components of that set up for expenditure tracking as well as expenditure recording. They are going to have an in-depth discussion of how the Agency Management Support Overhead, which is called AMSO, which is a Department of Human Services financial number that reflects internal indirect costs, are handled, and we'll have an analysis of that. And these are issues that the consultant, CLA, which is a financial consulting firm, with our financial staff, sat down and identified through a problem identification process. So they narrowed down what it was they thought would give the best set of information from a process improvement standpoint for the Department of Human Services. It also includes a look at the comprehensive community services in the recording of their expenditures and their billing process and the overall flow of that process, because we began that process in 2016. To your original question of whether or not they actually do an overall program analysis, they do not do that, nor are they equipped to do so. So that is one of the distinctions. And this work began after Supervisor Beckfield, it was your recommendation, as you noted. You believe it to be a good practice, and I think that it was agreed upon that this is a very good idea. And so that's when the conversations began. The conversations have ensued to the point where they are putting together, with this scope of services, their thoughts on how much it's going to cost to do that. And that information was shared electronically with the different chairs of Finance and Budget, Human Services, and the Committee on Administration, just to let them know that that was being worked upon. We don't have it yet. We were hoping to have something to show the board as a whole, but we do not have it back yet. Probably sometime later this week, Thursday or Friday, we'll have that information.
Thank you.
Supervisor Mowry.
I'm glad for that clarification. It was going to be, I was going to speak to that question of whether or not this is a program review or more a review of fiscal practices and accounting procedures and billing back and all those things, which it sounds like is most appropriate for Clifton Larson Allen and appropriate to proceed with. The resolution I cannot support because it says that it's a program review. And we've also heard from Diane Cable that Wisconsin Department of Human Services, or Health Services, has recognized Eau Claire County and another county in the state as being an innovative county in terms of trying to do something different that will bring down the cost of care and will actually reduce trauma to children by preserving and strengthening families. And if that is under review, then we need someone like the Child Welfare League of America or someone who has expertise in that area to make those kinds of determinations on whether or not the program is appropriate and functioning well and functioning at a high level of fidelity. So I cannot support this resolution. In fact, I would move to file.
Postpone indefinitely?
Yes.
The motion has been
Until
made.
we have the accounting report, until it's even, there's an agreement on the accounting report, until we have more information on which to make a decision of a broader review.
And there's a second to that motion by Supervisor Cronk. Further discussion in regard to the postpone indefinitely. Seeing none, please take your keypads and vote. It passes 15-11, and so this matter will be postponed. The next item on our agenda is File 1920-012.
To amend Section 4.35.165B of the Code, land conservation fees, and to repeal and recreate Chapter 17.04 of the Code.
Is there a motion? A motion by Supervisor Pagonis and seconded by Supervisor Leary. Discussion. And who's going to introduce this, by the way?
Supervisor Gibson.
Supervisor Gibson. Lucky you.
All right. Well, I think Greg and Amanda did a really good job of giving us a full overview of what this is and how much time we spent on it. I guess there's really not much more to say, other than I want to also thank the Ag Review Committee for all the work that they did on it over that period of 8 months. It was a challenge to begin with, but we made it through it. I think we made some good, sound decisions as to updating our code. Reason why this is under finance and budget is because of the fees that are related to it that they had mentioned during their presentation. I also would like to give a personal thank you to Mark Zuber, as he worked very hard next to me as the vice chair of that committee also. So I would ask everybody to vote in favor of this.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion in regard to this? Supervisor Knight?
Yeah, I just would encourage people to vote for us. When I saw the composition of the committee, I thought these people aren't going to be able to agree that the sun rises in the east, but they came up with a very good good set of rules.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
I missed them.
Excuse me,
Don't we need
did
a
you
motion
have
for
something
the
to offer?
amendment?
What
Wanted
was
to
the
make sure we
question?
had a motion, and we do.
We do. We have a motion and a second.
We have this amendment.
Right.
Okay. And there's an amendment to this particular ordinance.
We already approved the amendment at the last meeting.
Oh,
No,
and so do we need to?
because the amendment was referred to finance and budget.
Okay, and so in identifying this as just simply the resolution as it exists or as amended?
As amended.
Okay.
Well, we have to approve the amendment first. The amendment, if you remember correctly, was to adjust the lettering within the ordinance. It was just, it wasn't substantive related, it was just adjusting that there was one of the letters in the ordinance that was neglected, and so amending it corrected that grammatical error.
You should have in your packet an amendment. Thank you. Thank you. Motion has been made to approve the amendment they received. Is there a second to that motion? I'm looking for a second. Supervisor Jackson. Further discussion? We're voting on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Now we're going to go back to the full resolution as amended one.
Correct.
And please take your keypads and vote on the resolution. Ordinance. Get it right, yeah. And it passes unanimously. And the appointments? The last item on the agenda
Is an
is,
appointment for the Board of Land Use Appeals, and it's to appoint Karen Meyer, Tomish, to succeed herself.
is there a motion to that effect? Supervisor Anderson, seconded by Supervisor Lavelle. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. And we've accomplished our agenda. We are adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and Eau Claire County. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.